Welcome to At Issue. I'm H. Wayne Wilson. Thank you so much for joining us. The City of Peoria has just approved a $189 million budget. That's a big number. And it's amazing that it's a balanced budget with all the pressures because of pension costs and the reduced amount of income due to the economy. We're going to talk about that budget, but we're going to talk about much more regarding the future of the City of Peoria with the mayor and the city manager. First, let me introduce to you the city manager of the City of Peoria, Patrick Urich. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
And the mayor is Jim Ardis. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, H.
Let's start with the budget. Your challenge was to present a balanced budget, and you did that successfully. At what cost?
Well, one of the things that we really had to do last year was try and close that structural deficit. We were successful in doing that last year. This year was really a continuation of that budget that we started down that path last year. We really looked at trying to make sure that this was a budget that was achieving the council's goals of laying out efforts for more population growth, trying to set the stage to be more business friendly, looking at how we could deliver services in a more economical manner. So we were looking at all of those pieces and trying to follow the council's guidance and the council's direction, lay that out the resources, align the resources with the strategic aim of the council. But doing it knowing that we really couldn't be adding a lot of staff. We added some staff back, but we were still trying to maintain what we were currently going forward with.
Mayor, when the city manager talks about adding some staff back, we have to remind the viewers that 71 individuals took early retirement. You did not replace anywhere near all 71. You've added 8 in the new budget. Are you concerned about being able to deliver city services with reduced numbers of employees?
Well, I think the different department heads, with guidance from the manager, have done an outstanding job to continue to provide services that people expect. I don't think we've seen a real blip in service from the public safety side, which is always the most important element to the taxpayers. You know, on some of the other areas, there might be somewhat of a less response time, but I don't think it's outside of what's acceptable to people, keeping in mind that the alternative is, you know, raising taxes to pay for more people. So I think people appreciate the fact that we've downsized to the point that we're living more within our means, and I don't think that the services have been compromised at all.
The 188-point-something million budget, that levy does not raise the property tax rate. Is that correct?
That's correct. The overall property tax rate remains the same as it was in the previous year, but what we've seen is that citywide, the assessed valuation has declined about 1.8%. So we're really looking at a reduction of nearly $450,000 in that property tax levy, the amount of taxes that we'll collect. We'll collect over $26 million of property taxes in the upcoming year, but it's about $450,000 less than what we would have collected had the EAV remained constant.
The city was asked to present a 10-year projection. I believe that was Councilman Weaver's request. And keeping in mind that it's almost impossible to project 10 years with not knowing what Washington or Springfield is going to do, it calls for $22 million shortfall 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. If in fact that's true, what kinds of resources will you have to tap into, and will that go outside of the property tax?
Well, you know, in one of the discussions that we had at council this week was on that very topic, and I think that the discussion and looking at that 10-year budget is worthwhile, just so people, you know, can kind of take that 30,000 foot view of what we have coming down the road if we don't address other things. We have to, in my opinion, stay away from the property taxes, because if the governor has his way and the state legislature has their way, it looks like they're probably going to be successful in pushing those teacher pensions back on local communities, and the place they're going to do that's through property taxes. Through no fault of our own or without us having a choice in it, we're going to see an increase in the property taxes because of what the state continues to not address adequately. So I think, you know, what we need to do, I mean, the easy answer is you know, gain population, gain people that live in the city paying property tax. You know, you put more people here paying taxes, you don't need to raise the taxes. And that's really what we're working to try hard to do, is to, you know, to make Peoria more business friendly, to attract more businesses here and to attract more people here. And you can get there that way easier than you can by, you don't tax yourself to prosperity, as the saying goes.
Have you considered additional new taxes, a package liquor tax, a car registration tax, something of that nature?
We haven't, and I think that what that 10-year snapshot it illustrated, and I think what stuck out for me the most, is that if you take the growth rate that we've been seeing in our labor costs and the growth rate in our benefit costs, which is the cost of health care, the cost of pensions, that's really outpacing the revenue growth that we have. So that's the area that we really need to try and push down on that cost curve so that it's not continuing to grow at a rate that's faster than the revenue base that we have. So that's one of the things that we're going to have to do, and really that leads us towards looking at what services we might be able to outsource in the future. We just, at the council meeting this week, adopted an outsourced billing and collection services for refuse collection. So we're going to continue to look at all of those different elements so that we don't have that upward wage pressure and upward benefits pressure of having our own employee base.
What areas of city government might you look at for outsourcing or privatizing?
I think every area of city services, save for police and fire services, are probably on the table. I think that that's something that we need to look at. This past year, we did it with engineering services. We outsourced almost our entire engineering division. Many of the engineers that we have left are really now contract managers that are managing contracts in the private sector. We may look at building inspections and code enforcement. We may look in other areas. I think that everything needs to be on the table. Accounting services, for example, could be another area that we look at in the upcoming year.
Many of those positions are union positions, and you have union contracts coming up in about a year, I think. Are you concerned with privatizing some of those services and how it might relate to your union employees?
Well, you know, that concern is out there, and I think that our employees that are represented have seen through what we've done here in the last couple of years that is an option that we have to look at. I mean, the unfortunate part for the represented employees is the added wages and benefits and legacy costs that we have from these employees and the direction it's going is not sustainable for us or any other city. And we have to be able to keep Peoria that attractive place to live and keep our taxes low. And so if going to a private contractor in a lot of these types of positions helps us, allows the same service to our constituents, that's just something that either the represented people are going to have to come to terms with and help us, you know, help us contain our costs, or that's the way that we have to go. I mean, it's, you know, nobody's looking to make that happen, but it's inevitable that when they price themselves out of those positions, you know, we're going to take the alternative route.
So it's that, what has become an ugly word, pension costs.
Well, pension and health care both. I mean, they're on the rate that they're increasing versus where our revenues are. You can't get there from the direction we're going.
I want to talk about another future cost or potential future cost, CSO. And for those of you in the audience who have forgotten about CSO, it's been discussed over the decades. It's combined sewer overflow. The United States EPA has indicated that many communities, not just Peoria, must do something about combined sewer overflow. When there's a heavy rainfall, all sewage goes into one outlet and some of it goes into the Illinois River. What is the status of the CSO effort?
Well, we're continuing to negotiate with EPA for a solution on this. We think that we have a viable option to help address the issue. The cost is just under $100 million. Unfortunately, the EPA isn't really looking at the solution. They're looking at a formula that determines what they think the community can afford. So they're going at more from, you know, they think we should throw more money to fix the problem, and their price tag's about over 300 million. So we really have a difference of opinion here. If we think that we can get ourselves to about 96 or 97% for around 100 million, that is it's great for the CSO. It addresses the issue, has a huge impact on our problem, and the EPA is more focused on just spending a lot more money to accomplish 1 or 2 more % on the fix.
And just to add, I think the one other point with this is that the EPA is asking us to spend $200 million more than what we think that we can address, and it's not going to affect the environmental quality of the Illinois River any more than if we did nothing. And that's because you look at it from upstream, by the time the waters of the Illinois River reach Peoria, they're already compromised. They're already polluted. So that's one of the challenges that we have as well.
If the EPA agrees with your proposal, where might you look? Is this the sanitary district's responsibility in terms of the 100 million or whatever it costs?
The 100 million would be the cities. This is for the combined sewers that we have, the combined sanitary and storm sewers that we have inside the city of Peoria. But it would, and it affects some of our neighboring communities, and it affects the entire region. But we would look at it through, and I think the way the EPA looks at it, the affordability aspect, they look at it and say that your community can afford to pay higher sewer rates for these pieces, so for these fixes. So we would have to look at it and passing that cost back on to the residents and to the user of the system through higher sewer rates.
I want to talk about crime with the mayor, but first, one more item on the budget, and that is the last several years the city has cut capital programs, purchase of rolling stock, overlay programs on streets, etc. You can't do that forever. The number one complaint I've heard is police protection, and the number 2 complaint I've heard is the deterioration of the conditions of the roads in Peoria. What are you doing with the tight budget to try to remedy that public service?
You're absolutely right. The condition of the city streets, and particularly our arterial streets, are in bad shape, and that's something that we recognize. We have instituted a new arterial street overlay program. It started last year, and it's really designed to put $17 million over the next 4 years back into those arterial streets. The first street that we're working on is really the city's backbone. They're north-south arterial street, University Street. And we're going to be improving University Street from Nebraska to Forest Hill, and then also from just north of War Memorial Drive up to the Glen intersection. So more cars travel on University Street than on Knoxville every day. So it's really the area that we're going to focus on first. Then we're going to move on to some of the other arterial streets that are in need of repair.
Every so often we see the crime stats come out, and recently it showed that year-to-date numbers comparing 11 to 2012, the crimes against the person are up slightly. Overall crimes are down in the city of Peoria. If you look at a 10-year graph, crime has more or less, there's some blips, but more or less has been on a downward trend. With the exception of the crimes against bodies this year, that has been good news. Yet murders and rapes and things of that nature do get headlines. People respond to headlines. How do you envision the Don't Shoot program affecting overall crime in this city?
I firmly believe that the Don't Shoot program is going to have a dramatic impact on gun crimes, the violent crimes in Peoria that, as you mentioned, get the most headlines and really concern people the most. You know, we're still going to have to stay focused on the other crimes, but I think that the important thing that we're sending the message to people through a combined effort with the state's attorney and the U.S. attorney and all the branches of law enforcement that are involved with this is that this community has had enough. You know, we're standing up and saying we are not going to accept this violent gun crime in our city, and people that participate in that are going to be punished to the fullest extent, which is, you know, why we're going for, you know, state and in many cases federal charges on these things as it relates to gangs. So I think as we really put a lot of focus on that violent part, the other aspects of the crime numbers are going to improve. But I think the proof will be in the pudding, I guess. But I think that we're going to see, excuse me, I think we're going to see a drastic reduction in those violent crime numbers over the coming years because of the police department's focused way that they're going to be looking at these violent crimes.
Can you give me an example of Don't Shoot, a program that is working, that's helping to control these? The Bomb Squad is the most recent gang we've heard news about. Is there a specific, so we can get, we've heard about Don't Shoot. It's this great big picture. What's Don't Shoot?
Well, it's really a focused deterrence. And I mean, people that haven't read the book should read the book. David Kennedy. And if you want to do some research on a community that's been very successful, High Point is in North Carolina, was the first community and they've been using this methodology. They don't call it Don't Shoot, they just call it focused deterrence. But they're focusing their efforts on reducing gun crimes. And High Point is, at the time they started this, was about 80,000 population, which is a little bit smaller than us. But they were right around where Peoria is in terms of yearly homicides, somewhere between 10 and 15. And this has been a program that they have used every year, continue to fine-tune it, continue to use the methods that we're using. And they're down around 3 or 4 a year now. And the community goes crazy when they have one. But now their population is up to right around 100,000. So they've seen a good increase in the population of their community, and it's much safer. And that does a couple things. Number one, it shows people that it works. Number two, that it's sustainable over a long period of time, which is what we need to do.
Let's talk about growing the city in another way. That's economic development. I want to check off some projects. The new museum downtown, Caterpillar Visitor Center. We have the Pere Marquette coming on board in 6-8 months. The courtyard, the warehouse district. What does that mean to the city of Peoria?
It's critical to the city of Peoria. One of the council's goals was to make sure that we had a strong downtown and a burgeoning warehouse district. And I think that we're seeing that type of investment. And I wouldn't leave out, hopefully we'll see that Caterpillar will be moving forward with their expansion plans for their corporate headquarters, which I think would be another huge investment and a huge statement by Caterpillar of saying that Peoria is important, it's their home, it's where they want to be. And I think that as we look at that change, we're going to see a different downtown. The efforts that we have underway within this budget that the council just adopted, we've added a couple of positions to more attune our efforts in economic development, to have somebody in a leadership role working on economic development for the city, to work in partnership with the regional efforts that are going on, but to also be focused on what's happening locally. In addition, we have one staff position that we've added to focus on our commercial corridors, to really look at what other communities have done with business improvement districts, which is really a self-defined taxing district that's set up so that those businesses in the area can take the steps that they need, whether it be additional snow plowing and sidewalk clearing during the wintertime, or flowers in the springtime and in the summertime, as well as additional street lighting efforts that they might need to set the stage for a stronger commercial corridor. And so that's something that we'll be working on over the course of the next year. But also our entire organization, we've taken our planning and growth management department, our inspections division, and our economic development department, and combine them into one community development department. And really the focus that we have there is how can we take our development processes and make them as business friendly as they possibly can be, still accomplishing the goals that we have and the policy directions that the council has given us, but doing it in a way that we can move those turnaround times, those cycle times down even faster than where they are today.
We just listened to Patrick talk about the benefits, and yet there are critics out there that say that the city should not be involved as heavily as it is in these kinds of projects. The city issued almost $30 million in bonds for the Pere Marquette. The county issued $40 million in tax-supported bonds for the museum. Of course, there's Tiger funds for the warehouse district. How do you respond to those critics?
I respond by saying it's a lot of people want to say let the free market drive that, and that's how it always used to be, but those days are gone. I mean, we really would like it to be a situation where it's a level playing field and people are just going to come in and develop in our city because they want to be here. But the fact is the market out there is very competitive, and when you have a retail giant offered $40 million in incentives to locate a business in your community because of the sales taxes they drive versus us on the Peoria side that maybe couldn't afford to do that. Where do you think they're going to go? I mean, it's a fact. It's the way that business is happening. I mean, hey, you know, how the Sears block was vacant for 15 years plus. Everybody described it as the most valuable piece of real estate in Central Illinois because of its location and everything else. We did not have anybody knocking our doors down to come in and spend private money to develop something on that block. Our phones worked, our offices were open. It didn't happen. Same way with the Pier Marquette. I mean, it's an old historic structure. It's in a great location in proximity to the Civic Center, but a private developer just could not afford to come in there and spend the type of money it's going to take to get that place up. So I think that it's appropriate that the cities, and this isn't just Peoria, I mean, I think it's appropriate when all cities look at what they need to do to stimulate that investment. You know, I firmly believe that the investment that the city made in the Marriott project is going to stimulate a lot of additional growth in that Main Street area, and I think we'll see a couple more hotels come in because there is more need for quality rooms down there, and it's not going to cost us anything to bring those in.
Your across the river reference was Bass Pro.
Right.
A year ago, you said to the City Council, we're spending $720,000 a year to support the Peoria Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. And you felt that maybe we should drop that by $445,000 because on a per capita basis, Peoria was spending $6 and some change. East Peoria was spending $1.70, Morton $1.60, whatever. Have you been successful in rebalancing that?
We've spent a lot of time over the course of this past year working with representatives of the Civic Center Authority, working with representatives of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Hospitality Association, to talk about the issues that I outlined in the initial report that we gave to the council. We talked about the fairness issues. We talked about defining roles and responsibilities. And we're working right now to finalize agreements with the Convention and Visitors Bureau that will reflect a revised agreement that will deal with tourism and setting aside a certain amount of money for general tourism of the region as our city's contribution to that. And it's going to be probably more than anyone else in the region is contributing to the general area. Then the second piece, though, is specifically laying out a marketing contract for the Civic Center Authority and for the City of Peoria specifically, and we'll be laying that out as well. It's something that we've been working on over the course of the past year, and hopefully it'll be to council in November.
In the remaining minute, Mayor, I'd like to talk about education. And not about District 150. We all know about your efforts to try to improve the relationship with District 150 schools. But I'd like to talk about four-year university. You're a strong believer that we need to have a public four-year university. Where's the progress in that regard, and how might that impact the relationship with Bradley University?
Well, I think certainly Bradley is a huge asset to Peoria, and we value having a strong private university like Bradley in our community. It brings a lot of prestige to Peoria, frankly. We're looking at something that's going to complement Bradley's presence here. In a state school with, in many cases, it's economically more feasible for some students to be able to afford a state school and some of the offerings that they're going to have that Bradley doesn't. And we really feel strongly that, I mean, we're the only city of our size in the state that doesn't have a four-year university there. And we think that needs to change. We think that there's a lot of leakage out of Peoria going to the other state schools, that if we had one here, they would stay here. And so we're going to continue to push in that regard.
The University of Illinois at Springfield has been brought up real briefly. Any discussions with them?
We have. We've had discussions with UIS. They've been here in Peoria for over 30 years. A lot of people don't realize it. So we have the presence of a four-year university here, but what we need to do is expand that program if possible, and really do some more marketing to help people understand who we have.
And with that, our half hour is already up. Thank you to Mayor Jim Ardis and to City Manager Patrick Urich. I appreciate your insight into the operation of the City of Peoria. Next week on At Issue, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Illinois, Thomas Kilbride, will be here to talk about cameras in the courts and other issues concerning the High Court of the State of Illinois. Join us next week for At Issue.